What's going on, everybody? Haunted Beard here. Welcome back to my channel. Well, today I have got another Saw review video here for you. I've been making my way through the entire franchise, and today we are talking about Saw 3D, aka Saw the Final Chapter, aka Saw 7. Yeah, this is the last one they cranked out before taking a little bit of a break. But anyway, here we go. Saw 3D. Let's get into this thing. So Saw 3D picks up right after Saw 6, and after trying to kill Detective Hoffman, Jill Tuck goes into protective custody. Meanwhile, Bobby Dagan, a self-proclaimed Jigsaw survivor, is put through his own series of tests where he must save both his friends and his wife. Alright, so Saw 3D immediately kicks things off with a flashback that follows immediately after the events of the first Saw. So we see Dr. Gordon trying to escape the room. He's only got 1 foot, burns his leg on a pipe to cauterize the wound, and that's our opening scene. And I just feel like they've already kind of revealed and shown their hand here, because it's like, okay, well, obviously he's going to factor in some sort of significant way into this thing, and we'll get back on that when I discuss the ending. But it's just like right from the get-go, it's like they kind of just sort of reveal. They just show their hand, and it's like, oh, okay. So just kind of an odd choice to start the film off that way. After this, we get our first trap scene, and this is such like a this scene is like a visual anomaly in this movie, because I don't know if this is for certain, but I would be willing to bet that this has got to be the first scene in the entire Saw franchise that is shot outside in broad daylight. And so it's just like really jarring, and it just is like, whoa, this feels different. Anyways, the setup here is you've got there's 3 people locked in this room in like the middle of this like sort of Times Square type deal, and everybody can see in because they're behind this glass. And you got 2 boyfriends and the girlfriend up top, and they have to push these saws back and forth to either kill one another or decide to kill the girl who's cheated on both of them with each other. And this scene is kind of fun in like a so bad it's good sort of way, because the acting here is not great, but I just think the setup is hilarious, like 2 jealous boyfriends like fighting over this chick, and it's just hilariously cheesy. Also, too, the blood in this entire movie is like borderline pink. And I don't know if that's just a result of the 3D filming or what, but it's so weird. I mean, it's like almost pink. Anyways, this scene plays out. Like I said, it's kind of just cheesy fun. And then we get just a great line when the guys decide that they're going to kill the girl. We just get just a solid piece of dialogue with this.
What are you doing, you fucking asshole?
I think we're breaking up with you, Tina.
Now, like all these Saw movies, Saw 3D also has at least 2 sort of major storylines that it's following. It follows sort of the Hoffman, Jill, and this new detective, Gibson. And then it follows a new character, Bobby Dagan, played by Sean Patrick Flanery, in his whole ordeal. And if I could kind of divide this movie in half, there's actually one half, or at least one storyline, that I actually kind of enjoy and think makes for a pretty effective Saw movie, while the other half is just kind of meh. I actually quite enjoy Sean Patrick Flannery's storyline and his character. I think in terms of just sort of singling out the Saw franchise, he is one of the better characters and more interesting characters and kind of more fleshed out characters. And I like the game that he has to play, and I like all the sort of trials and the traps that he has to go through. And so for a Saw movie, I really like that storyline. I think it's got some good kills, and it just actually makes for somewhat of an interesting character. But the other storyline I just don't really find all that compelling or interesting. Part of that is due to the performance and the dialogue from Detective Gibson. And we're introduced to him. He's with Internal Affairs, and when we first see him, they've got Jill in a holding cell. because she wants to turn Hoffman in exchange for full immunity. And he looks over at her, and we get just another beautifully written line of dialogue when he looks at her and says,
"Jeez, she looks crazier than a sack full of cats."
all right. Anyways, just in general, there are some things that I kind of like about this movie and other things that I don't. First of all, you only get to see one scene with Tobin Bell, which is just a bummer. However, that is kind of a mixed aspect to it, because as much as I like Tobin Bell and think he is clearly the highlight to this entire franchise, so it's a bummer that you don't get very much of him. He's only in one scene. It is nice that they don't really use as many flashbacks, giving us just kind of unnecessary information throughout this. So there's kind of a bit of a positive and negative there. Also, too, this is got to be the bloodiest and goriest and over-the-top Saw movie yet. Look, this is a franchise of movies that is pretty much made for the 3D gimmick. And so they just throw every last possible body part and, you know, blood, guts, and gore at the screen as they possibly can. And so there is a lot of just kind of cheesy, ridiculous, over-the-top fun to be had here because of the 3D. And so if that's all you're coming for, you know, you're going to at least get some enjoyment out of it. And so because we get just some outrageous 3D gore, the kills here and the traps I think are pretty good. And it's actually got, dare I even say, maybe a couple of some of the best ones in the franchise. I think probably my favorite kill is the one with the dude from Lincoln Park as him and his group of racist buddies. I mean, this is just a wonderfully hilarious kill. It's fantastic. And you just get just some gnarly practical effects where he's literally glued to the chair of a car, which is just so absurd. Like, just, like how much glue would you possibly have to use to literally glue a person to the, I don't know. It's so absurd, but it's just fantastic. And, you know, and then you get, eventually the car, you know, falls off the stands and the tire just completely demolishes the chick's face. The one dude gets his jaw ripped off by the chains. He drives through his buddy in the garage. And it's just, it's almost like this Rube Goldberg machine chain reaction thing of just over-the-top insanity. And I mean, it's just, it's great. And so I love this kill, and I think it's fantastic. So then we jump back to Sean Patrick Flannery's story, and he is in the middle of a book tour as he has written a book talking about his experience of surviving the Jigsaw Killer. And then he's at this support group where he's talking with all these other people who have survived Jigsaw traps, and you get kind of these brief little cameo appearances from characters throughout the series that you may recognize who have survived Jigsaw. And then, of course, you've got Dr. Gordon kind of sitting off in the corner in the shadows, acting and talking all sinister-like. And again, it's like, oh, I wonder what he's up to. And I feel like this is just, it's such an indication that a franchise has completely run out of ideas. And it's like, yeah, why don't we bring back a character who hasn't been in, you know, the last 6 movies, right? Let's bring back a character from the original movie, and we'll, you know, put him back in this thing. As if, like, I mean, look, Gordon is, I mean, he's an all right character, but, like, he's not going to, like, put butts in seats. It's not like all of a sudden, oh, man, they're bringing Dr. Gordon back. Let's go to this thing. And so it's just like an indication that we have pretty much hit the bottom of the barrel here in terms of ideas. Anyways, Sean Patrick Flannery is taken, and he ends up having to start his game and go through his traps and tests, as Jigsaw's also captured some of his friends and his wife, and he's got to go through to try to save them. Meanwhile, Jill has been taken over to a safe house by Gibson, and she's all freaking out that Hoffman's still going to be able to find him there, and she doesn't think that the house is safe enough. And she says, you know, what makes you think he's not going to be able to find me here? And then we get just another fantastic piece of dialogue delivered by Gibson.
Jill, it's a safe house. Safe house. Safe house. You get it?
Yeah. Yeah, we get it. Thank you. Then we get Sean Patrick's first test, and he enters the first room and he finds that his publicist has been captured and she is locked up. So in this case, Jigsaw has inserted a fish hook with a key attached to it down into her stomach, and it's still attached to a string that is now up out of her mouth. And good old Sean Patrick has got to pull that thing up out of her stomach. However, the catch is that anytime the sound goes above a whisper, these 3 metal spikes are going to inch closer until they insert themselves into her neck. And it's just, I love it. It's so ridiculous, right? Because it's like, well, clearly nobody is going to be able to do this without making a sound. But anyway, it kind of just makes it better because, like, first of all, like, it is genuinely disturbing. Like, the idea of having to pull a fishhook up out of somebody's stomach, like, that scene kind of makes me cringe a little bit because it's gnarly. And I also find it hilarious that it's like he continually just sits there and, like, screams at her to shut up, which is just darkly hilarious and comedic to me. But anyways, we get, of course, a pretty cool little kill here, as ultimately she can't keep her mouth shut. And be quiet enough, so she gets the spikes through the neck. So anyway, that one's just such a wild and twisted little trap, but I enjoy it. It's pretty good. Then Sean Patrick gets his next trap where he finds that his lawyer has been trapped. It's kind of a similar setup with these metal spikes, except this time they're going into her eyes and mouth. And he's got to lift up these weights to try to do it long enough, but every time he does, he gets hit with these spikes into his sides, right? And of course, you get these nice, just eye-popping 3D boom when the spikes go through her eyes. It's another fun one. And as I was going through, just now looking at my notes, I realized, like, pretty much all of my notes only involve this side of the story. Like, I was writing notes throughout this thing and trying to, like, you know, just give my ideas on the other half of this movie with Jill and Gibson and Hoffman, and there just, like, isn't a whole lot to say about it. I couldn't even remember Gibson's name. I had to, like, go back through halfway through and, like, what's this guy's name again? It's just not really all that interesting. I just don't really get a whole lot out of it at all. So the rest of Sean Patrick's storyline plays out. He's got one more test before he gets to his wife, and this is his best friend. And I kind of like this setup too. They change things up. This guy's blindfolded, and he's got to guide and direct him across these wooden planks that are, like, you know, 20 feet up in the air to get this key so he can unlock it from the chain that's around his neck. And there's kind of some pretty fun and decent suspense here, and I just kind of like how it all plays out. And so, again, I have a fun time with this one. After that, you get just a gnarly scene involving his teeth where he's got to pull out his own teeth to get this combination to this lock to where he can finally go see his wife. And then, of course, the final test plays out where he has got to redo the test or the trap that he lied about in his book, where he's got to insert these metal hooks into his chest and hoist himself up to get his wife out of this chain. And so, again, I think in terms of sort of the Saw plot lines, this is, I think, one of the better ones, and I just kind of enjoy this whole story. I think it's pretty good. Like I said, there's some good kills, and I like his character okay, and so I have a pretty fun time with this side. Anyways, back to the other side of this movie here. We finally get the conclusion with Hoffman and Jill. So come to find out, Hoffman pulls the old switcheroo with this dead body. And so he ends up getting into the, I don't know, FBI headquarters or whatever, in Internal Affairs' main office or whatever, because he's trying to get to Jill, right? So he goes in there and shoots everybody and gets to Jill and goes into her cell, getting ready to kill her. And it's like, this scene it's just ridiculous because, like, somehow in like the most conveniently placed weapon, Jill just happens to have a little shiv in her jail cell, which she uses to stab Hoffman in the neck so she can make a quick little getaway. Anyways, there's a little cat and mouse chase sequence. Ultimately, Hoffman ends up getting to Jill, And they do a little callback to the very first Saw trap where he puts on the reverse fly trap onto Jill, and we get just some really solid, good old 3D gory goodness as that thing goes off and her face is just splat all over the screen. Then what we ultimately get is Hoffman getting ready to make his getaway, and he is caught and captured for the big reveal, the mastermind behind it all, Dr. Gordon. And this has got to be just like the worst ending ever. It's so bad. It's like, what? And then it's like they do just this awful flashback stuff where you're like, oh, he was in it all along. And it's like they completely retcon anything else just to inject him back into the story that he was there all along helping out Jigsaw. And it's like supposed to be this like, oh, you never would have guessed it was him. And it's just like, it's atrocious. It's terrible. The ending to this movie is an abomination. It's awful. And so he takes Hoffman back to the room that he was in from the first Saw movie and locks it down, and game over. And that's how this thing ends. It's truly atrocious. So that is Saw 3D for you. And I was thinking kind of right before I filmed this review, like, what the heck am I going to give this thing in terms of grade? Because, like, again, there's half of this movie that I actually kind of enjoy, and there's some, again, pretty ridiculous, but ultimately, I think, pretty great sort of 3D, gory, insane kills in this thing that I have a fun time with. And so, like, there's kind of that aspect of this that, like, the kills in this, I think, are, you know, like an 8 out of 10. And the Sean Patrick Flannery storyline is like, you know, for a Saw storyline, it's probably like a 7.5 out of 10. Then the other storyline is like a 3, and the ending is like a 1. And so it's like, I don't know how you want to juggle all those numbers around and factor them out. So, you know, what the heck? I'll just say, let's just give this thing a 5 if I have to sort of put a number on it. But anyways, those are my thoughts on just the insanity that is Saw 3D. But yeah, hit me up down below though in the comments. Let me know what you guys think of this thing, what you love or hate about it, and yeah, would love to hear from you. So that's it for Saw 3D. Next up, we've got Jigsaw, which is, they finally kind of decided, I guess, to do a little bit of a reboot here. But anyways, we got 2 left. We're going to do Jigsaw, then we're going to do Spiral, and then I'll conclude this whole thing with a ranking. So that's what's up next in my Saw franchise series. And yeah, that's all I got for you. If you like content like this, hit that subscribe button. Is this what I do on The Haunted Beard? It is horror and thriller movie content coming at you. So hit that subscribe button. And I will see you next time on The Haunted Beard.